name is Brian McCann. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Texas. I'm an instructor in communication studies and also a member of the International Socialist Organization. Had I had the opportunity to ask the lovely and talented David Horowitz a question, I would have asked him to account for the fact that he spent no shortage of time in his speech here picking on women's studies departments, African American studies, gay and lesbian studies, and departments designed to represent the interests and experiences of underrepresented groups in our society. Yet he had nothing to say about free market indoctrination that goes on in our business departments, the contracts between our geology department and oil companies, or engineering departments and military contractors that do things that I would argue are plenty political. And I think the fact that he doesn't do that betrays how he cherry picks, and what he's really doing is trying to shroud reactionary, and he uses the word fascist pretty loosely, but I think he's a lot more fascist than anyone else who's here, political agenda, and shrouding it in this language of academic freedom is disingenuous, is dangerous, and people like David Horowitz need to be confronted every time they pollute our campus with their ideas.
I agree with him in the sense that there is a bias in our campuses. Just as a conservative, I mean, I know firsthand experience that some of my professors have expressed liberal points of views, which they're entitled to, but I don't think it should be brought up into the academic curriculum. I think you should leave your point of view, your private point of view, as your own self-belief, and then teach academic criteria.
Did they give you lower grades?
I'm just talking about being expressed to the lectures in class. I'm not talking about grades and shit. I don't think that. But in that defense, I didn't let it come to that, because when I wrote my papers, I wrote in a liberal point of view. I didn't want to take that chance. I didn't express what I actually felt, because I felt if I did express what I actually believed, I'm not saying they were going to fail me, but let's just say they give me a B instead of an A, and C instead of a B, so something like that. If it's
but you haven't tried yet, so you don't know if
I don't want to take the risk. Actually, my professor of government was a libertarian. I do look up the professor watch list. Conservatives have, and I don't take classes. my I do think there are some people who, and not at this university, I don't know of any, but I do think that there might be that case, because I've seen it on the news when it happened, and it does. Let me point. It goes for both sides. I don't think a liberal should receive a lower grade for having a conservative professor. It goes both ways. It just happens to be in the academic criteria that the institutions have to be more liberal.
Bad reason. What's your name?
Eddie Cooney.
Freedom to explore whatever you want to explore. And I do think that it's worth noting that this is a contradiction, right? To come in and say that students are getting fed one line of thought, and that's wrong, but here's the line of thought I do want you to have, and this is the only thought you can have, and you shouldn't be exposed to these other ideas, that goes against the whole idea of academic freedom. And so I think it's worth pointing out there's a difference there between academic freedom and intellectual diversity, and I would have liked to have heard more of a response from him on that. I don't think we ever get to have that debate with him. It's, again, just his thoughts.
I saw that you were in line. Did you get a chance to answer him? Ask him a question. Are you
having a question? Yes, a million. I'm actually working on a chapter on David Horowitz in my dissertation, so I would have loved to have the chance to either debate him or ask one question. Dana got my question, which is, if students are not blank slates, then what's the fear of indoctrination? If we can't mold them into some scary monster, then what's the big deal with having them hear lots of different perspectives, right? I probably would have also asked him the difference between academic freedom and intellectual diversity, for sure, because I think that it's a mistake to equate those two.
And actually, it was so funny because we were actually protesting outside, and there was one lady that walked in, and she was like, "Get yourself an education." She just kind of like flips her hair, and I was just like, "Get an education." And we're all not made equal. Gender has no social construction whatsoever, etc., etc. I mean, there are many theories that we should be open to, but he's pretty much telling us that we should be only restricted to like one theory, and I don't think that's right.
Well, I appreciate it.
It's so outrageous, the things that he says, and it's so difficult to to even respond meaningfully. And the only appropriate response is, look, this is a witch hunt, plain and simple. I'm a target of it. There are so many other people who are targets of it, and that's what I don't even think he believes what he says. You know, I really think that he's an opportunist. He takes these things that the right is having a culture war on the campus. It's the only space we have left because, you know, the political scene has shifted so wildly in the United States that I think there's a kind of desperation to his intervention here.
I think what he said really was indoctrination. I think what calling people fascist and dodging the question, that is fascism.
I can certainly recall when I was in college, I think that to some extent they weakened their argument when they screamed certain things. And I have a lot of difficulty watching provocation like that just for the sake of provocation. But I certainly understand what they were doing here. I am by no means a 100% supporter of everything that Mr. Horowitz says. Quite frankly, I think that social construction and gender is a valid point, but at the same time, it's not one, like he said, that I would teach solely. What was your question?
That's all right. Now you've been in school, you know, for a while, and you've kind of seen both sides of academic freedom, from the conservative and the liberal points. Do you think that academic freedom is something? Do you think it's an extremely important issue, and do you think it's being threatened at all today?
Can I be completely honest with you?
Absolutely.
I've been lying the whole time. I don't think I don't think that academic freedom is particularly threatened. I personally. However, I do think that there is, to some extent, coercion, and students are occasionally feel like they need to quiet down. Like, for example, if I had a professor who was particularly left-leaning, who was teaching a class like constitutional law, it would be very silly for me to espouse conservative viewpoints on that test. At the same time, maybe it's not such a bad thing that you learn how to write from the opposing point of view. If anything, that's a good thing. But I think it exists. Is it something I would write multiple books about? No. I'd recommend Horowitz's book, Radical Son. It's his autobiography. I found it interesting. I'm by no means an expert on academic freedom. I went to a small liberal arts college in St. Louis. I did not go to UT. I'm here for law school. I have no complaints about the way the law school has been taught.
Now, did you see a lot of positive things that came out of today's talk, and if so, what were they?
Certainly it was funny to watch people on both sides of the aisle squirm. Positive things, I mean, you know, anytime you get people together to supposedly debate intellectual discourse, it's a good thing. Was that happening? I'm not so sure. I think maybe a structured debate between Mr. Horowitz and his cloud would be the best way to do this, rather than having Mr. Horowitz speak. But as you can tell, it's clearly difficult for Mr. Horowitz to get a place to speak, so maybe this is the best way to do it.
Ron, do you have anything to add to that?
Were you lying to your
I was not inclined to ask Mr. Horowitz a question. I felt that any question I would have asked him would have been silly to be asked in front of all these people. But I will say this, my friend works for Mr. Horowitz in Los Angeles, my very close friend whom I used to live with in Los Angeles. And Mr. Horowitz is a very, very, very nice person. And the attacks on his character, I think, are unfair.